that is good character development, and that is a good way to write somebody because he's not straying off of his path.
Welcome to the Weekly Fix podcast, where we're just two friends talking about our passions within movies, TV shows, gaming, and comics. Thanks for checking out the podcast. We hope you like it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Weekly Fix. My name is Jacob, and joining me, as always, is Zane. And we have a pretty fun episode this week because I was able to keep my promise. I am caught up on Rings of Power. Now, it did take a lot out of me, I gotta admit, but I gotta say I am enjoying the journey. I'm enjoying the show a lot more than I was previously, so I'm super excited to talk about it a little bit, maybe break down some stuff. Maybe we have some theories going on, so that'll be super fun. But Zane, before we get into any of that stuff, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. We had an awesome weekend. My wife was able to attend a women's conference for our church, so I was double dad duty. I was watching my brother's dog, and I was watching both of my children solo, and it was awesome. We actually got to go to a cookout together, which was super fun. One of the dads from the church put it on and brought everyone over to his house, taking that risk of messes and boiled pasta water all over the stove by guest, you know. But it was a great time, and the weekend was a blast, and I as well am enjoying the journey that we have been able to start with this Rings of Power. And I am so impressed that you have caught up, Jacob. I'm going to be honest, I didn't have much faith, and that's on me. I just didn't think you'd be all the way caught up, but dude,
Listen,
that is awesome that you are.
I've never not kept my promise on the podcast. Anytime I said that I'm going to catch up, I have caught up.
Is that true?
So it is true. It is definitely true. I promise
think we
you
need
guys.
to. I think we've had some promises broken.
We can fact check it, but if I said I promise I will be caught up, I've been caught up. So
okay.
Before we get into any of that stuff, I know that you recently watched The Hitman. Tell me a little bit about that. Did you enjoy it? What did you think about it?
Yeah, well, so actually, the Fall Guy,
or the Fall Guy.
Yeah, so Fall Guy was incredible for me. I think it was one of those movies that kind of hits like that perfect spot for me. I know we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I really love romantic comedies, which is kind of like my guilty pleasure genre. But it's not even like guilty about it. I just enjoy them, and I'm definitely okay with that. I'm confident enough in my masculinity and my marriage that, you know, I can enjoy a rom-com every once in a while. But the fun thing about Fall Guy is actually it's not even that much romantic comedy. It's more action than anything, and the action is incredibly well done. We were talking about The Killer's Game last podcast and how director was a stuntman. And The Fall Guys was just a love letter to stuntmen, and it was really, really fun, good action. It was funny. There was a romantic thread throughout it that was good and not overplayed. It wasn't too... some of those can be like melodramatic or super cheesy, and it wasn't a cheese fest. But when it was wanting to be a cheese fest, it did it on purpose, and it's always kind of fun when they can do it well, and I think they did it really well. So I had a blast with The Fall Guy. I think it's a great date night movie for any couples who enjoy a romantic comedy, especially if you're inclined towards action. Now, if you're more of you like more romance than anything else in your movie, it definitely is going to fall short for you on that front. But it's definitely one to watch with the wife or the girl.
Now, is this the movie that had Ryan Gosling in it?
Yeah, Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt.
Okay, yeah, so that's already a pretty good cast when you're starting off for a movie. So it's fun that they were able to lean into more of the cheesiness of the romance side of it, but also give you some fun action. I know I watched the trailer for this one. I think maybe when we went and saw Deadpool and Wolverine, I think they showed this trailer before that movie. Yeah. Maybe it was another movie that I saw it before. But this one didn't actually look terrible. I'm not a big romantic comedy or even really romantic fan. It's just not something I get into. Like I said, I'm still waiting to see Green Hulk catch Red Hulk's fist. So I'm all about the action. Right, so this one might be yeah, that's what I'm thinking. This might be my one opportunity to maybe enjoy something in that genre.
And, it has Aaron Taylor Johnson in it, which I really like him in pretty much anything that he's done. And he's really, really good in this. He plays a surprising role. as like kind of he's the actor for which Ryan Gosling is the stuntman for, and he does a great job at being just someone that you don't really love.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is he Mike supposed to be the main love interest and Ryan Gosling's like the side one that by the end of the movie he's the main one, or do they not lean into that kind of at all?
Oh, there is no love for Aaron Taylor Johnson at
Okay.
all. His player's
He is
Tom.
the
He is
love
just
Ryan Gosling is through and through.
absolutely, yeah,
Awesome.
through and through.
Yet it's nice when they don't kind of do those tropes that you see in movies where it's like, oh, she really likes this guy, but by the end of the movie, she's actually fallen in love with the nicer guy. So it's cool that they actually just kind of leaned into it from the very beginning.
Yeah, they did, and they did a really good job with it. I really enjoyed it. Now it did feel a little long. It's over 2 hours for this movie. It just seemed like it could have been probably 20 minutes shorter.
Okay.
But there was actually the option to watch the extended cut, and I was like, probably not going to watch 2.5 hours right now.
Right.
But yeah, I think it hit all the marks for this type of movie. For me, this is really killing it. You know, it's not like a 9 or a 10 or anything, but you know, it's definitely close to an 8.
So that's what I was about to ask you before we start talking about things that I still think are too long. Rings of Power. What would you rate this movie? I know you said it's not a 9 or a 10, so are you leaning on that 8, or do you think it's maybe a 7?
So I gave it an 8, and I think for the genre, like if I compared all of my 8 movies, it's definitely down toward the bottom for that.
Okay,
but it's
so
just as far
8.
as like, yeah, if I wanted to watch a rom-com, like I am very happy to come back to this movie.
Okay.
This is one that I will come back and probably watch again, especially around like those holiday time frames.
Valentine's Day and stuff like that.
What we used to do on Valentine's Day week is during that week we would watch a rom-com every night. So now that we have children, that hasn't really been too much of a tradition, but we used to watch one every single night, and so this would be one that would probably make it into the rotation if we if that picks back up, which I think it will.
Well, I think that speaks volumes, though, to how good the movie really is. If we've had a lot of great romantic comedies movies, I would say over the years. I always hear a lot of people speak highly of a bunch of them. So, if someone like you that is such a movie guru would really enjoy this movie enough to put it into that 7 movie rotation for a Valentine's week, I think that speaks pretty highly of the movie right there.
Yeah, I think so, and I don't think my wife enjoyed it as much as I did. Just because I think it was more action heavy, and she likes action. It's not that she doesn't, but it doesn't speak to her like it. I just think the stunts, and knowing that pretty much everything was practical in the stunts, just increases that like wow factor for me. And seeing what they're doing, it's pretty cool.
So I know you said your wife didn't like it as much. Do you think this may have been a movie maybe geared towards guys a little bit more, trying to get them a little bit more interested in this type of movie?
I don't necessarily think it was 100% aimed at them, but I do think it probably falls more towards the people with stunt. I think it was more of kind of like, how Deadpool 1 was pitched as like a romance movie for Valentine's Day. Yeah. I think this was more of like, hey,
that same vein.
You can get all the girls to watch Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling in a romantic comedy, and then it turns out to be like a stunt movie.
Okay. Well, that's fun then. I think that's obviously a good way to go about it too, especially I don't think this movie anyone was really expecting it to be, a big hit. Now, is this a streaming only movie, or can you see this one in theaters?
You could have. Yeah, it released in May.
Okay, so this one's been out for a little while.
Yeah, so it just came to streaming 2 weeks ago on Peacock. So you can watch it on Peacock for free right now if you have Peacock, or you can rent it on Amazon for like $6.
Oh, that's not bad at all. So I think that's maybe a good movie recommendation here for like a date night, like Zane was just talking about. Whether you have to pay $6 for it, or get it for free on Peacock. I know one thing: you're not going to go on a cheaper date than $6 nowadays. So that might be a good little path to go if you wanted just something cheap and just fun to watch.
No, it was like $33 for boba the other night.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing's cheap anymore. No. But talking about things that definitely aren't cheap, and I think the product really shows it. I kind of want to go ahead and start getting into some Rings of Power stuff, because the show is absolutely stunning. You can tell that they aren't skipping edges, they aren't cutting corners. They're not doing any of that with this show, because the show is so visually stunning. I think the acting has been fantastic. Now that I'm finally caught up on it, I feel good being able to speak about a lot of these things. But I do still feel like the episodes are running a little long. I feel like, a lot of these episodes I noticed were like hour and 10, hour and 15, which sometimes it's good. Sometimes I'm like, all right, good. I really like where this story's going. But there's a few episodes where I did feel like, okay, they probably could have ended this 5 minutes earlier, 5 to 10 minutes earlier, and then started the next episode with some of the things that they, continued with towards the end of the episode. But overall, I gotta say, my opinions on season 1 have definitely changed. I think once I finished season 1, I think they did a good job of hooking me into the show. It definitely got a lot better. I was enjoying a lot of the storylines. And then season 2, I think, has really kept a very good pace. Now, I know you had previously said you felt like the pacing was a little off, and I do think it was for the first 2 episodes.
First two episodes only.
Yeah, and like you've said to me off, podcast, because you hadn't even watched all 3 episodes by the last time we did it, or maybe it's just 2 at that point. I'm not for sure. You've told me off podcast though that it got better, and it definitely did. And I got to say, episode 3 and 4 has really got this show going in a really, really fun direction. So starting off, I know you're caught up now. What have been your initial thoughts on these last 2 episodes that we've gotten?
Yeah, the last 2 episodes, like you said, I think the first 2 struggled with pace a little bit, and I'm struggling to find. So just right off the rip, my biggest complaint is kind of how they're treating the elves, and okay. I think they're doing a little bit of injustice to Galadriel, and I will. Sorry, I'm apologizing. I got called out for using her name inappropriately or saying it wrong last time. So it is Galadriel, right? Is that correct,
yes,
Jacob?
That's how I pronounce it.
All right, Galadriel.
We might both be wrong though.
Yeah, so I was told I was saying Galadriel I was forgetting that first A, so Galadriel. But I think that's a long time to say that. Zach, you're welcome. But Galadriel, I think is does a really I think they are doing her actually probably the best. Elrond is okay. I think his character is a little bit too inconsistent.
Okay.
But the rest of the elves, I feel like they're playing them too dumb. I feel like the High Elf, and especially Celebrimbor, I feel like they're just giving him a little bit too much leniency with how bad the decision-making they're making is for elves. Elves are supposed to be the higher race, kind of the savior of Middle-earth, and it seems like they're kind of the ones making the worst decisions with what they're given. And so I really think... So at the end of episode 2, season 2, we get to see Sauron kind of trick Celebrimbor. And I think we really should have seen his manipulation tactics more before then. So he really got in and was allowed to have the influence without him really displaying any manipulation powers. And I really would have liked to have seen Sauron's powers be on display instead of Celebrimbor be an idiot. And I think that's kind of like the give and take. So I think it's just a little bit of lack of writing, of knowing how to write such a powerful villain correctly and not make our good guys look like idiots. And I think I'm struggling with that. Have you felt that at all?
So I want to go back, so I'll get to that because I definitely agree with that take. So I want to start off with Elrond, right? I think throughout season 1 and at the start of season 2, I was like, he might be one of the best characters in the whole show. I really liked how he was being written. I liked his acting. I think he's a fantastic actor. But this last episode is really where I started to feel like they are pushing him in the writing direction of being annoying. The scene in particular that really kind of irritated me was when Galadriel says, I'm gonna fight all these orcs. Obviously we're getting into spoilers, so if you guys haven't watched it, you guys can skip ahead. But I do want to talk about this scene in particular because this was a scene that bothered me with Elrond. Is when she does decide she's gonna basically sacrifice herself to slow these orcs down so that they can get to Eregion. And all the other elves are like, the elves in this group are like, it's amazing that she's sacrificing her life for us so we can complete our journey. And he says, no, she's only doing it for the ring. That really bothered me because I don't get that character feeling when I see Galadriel with the ring. I really do feel like she is making an effort to defeat Sauron and doing things that's in the best interest of not only her and the elves, but of all of Middle Earth. And I feel like they pushed Elrond into this corner of just being almost just a ring hater. And I think he has some, reason to feel that way because
For
obviously
sure.
the rings are being used in a manipulative way. I mean, that's what they're made to do is so that he can have the ring to rule them all. I mean, that's the whole point of Lord of the Rings. But I feel like they have pushed him in such a corner that before he was open to hearing other people talk. And I know he's been done wrong and I know he's been lied to and all that stuff. But that felt like a really out of place way to push that character in such a quick way. And I know he's been lied to a lot and I understand it to an extent. But that was one thing that really bothered me about this last episode. And really, I don't think it's a bad thing about the episode. I just don't like that they're pushing him into such a corner. So I don't know if
So
you feel that way about him as much as I do.
so
But that's
I
something that bothered me.
So what's really funny is I actually have zero issues with that scene you just described, but I feel the same way about Elrond. I feel like he's over critical at this moment
Yes.
of almost everything, and he's not really open like you were saying he was in season one. I felt like that character development kind of happened off screen. Like when he's
Yes.
riding, when he found out that Sauron was there with him, but he was there the whole time, and we know he didn't have his influence on those rings. So I think we really need. I think he really should have been able to use some reason there and kind of seen the benefit that these rings had and understand. And I really thought they were going to bring that into when he was talking to his mentor by the stream there. I
Yeah.
really thought when he was showing him, like, look at the power that these have over life and like what good it's doing for our people. Like, I really thought that was going to be the moment where he came back to normalcy.
I
Now,
felt the exact same way.
I do agree, though, and I think he kind of did at the start of that episode. It felt like he was kind of going back, but I agree with him. She did not do that for the elves, and I think that's consistent with her character. Her character has been pretty selfish the entire two seasons. You know, she is wanting to kill Sauron because he killed her brother, not
Yes.
because he's this great evil. And then her selfishness of not telling Elrond immediately that Sauron was there because she wanted to use the rings, and not telling Celebrimbor that Sauron, like, if she would have just told him, hey, that dude, that's actually Sauron, the guy I hate the most in the entire world, and the one that I've spent my entire life devoted to killing, that's the guy that was here, don't work with him again. I feel like that would have been better character development for her, but since that's what they're going with, her sacrifice was completely for the ring. I don't think she cared about those elves at all. And you can kind of see that from the reaction earlier in the woods with the ghost. That one elf gets ripped away, and she doesn't go in after him to fight for him. She just kind of stands back on guard, kind of defending for herself, kind of like just accepting that that troop was murdered. Do you kind of, and that's
So
kind of
I
what I
get,
felt like that.
and I was looking for the scene because I know you had made mention of wishing she had just come out with it, and I was in that moment, like I was like, she needs to just say that Sauron, like just say it. I hate when shows do this thing, but I think they did do a good job of explaining why she didn't do that, and it goes back to your thing of being selfish. Was when she does talk to the High King, he was like, you didn't tell us because of your mistake that you made, right?
Yep.
I
Yeah,
liked
didn't
that
want to seem like
aspect of
she
it.
was an idiot.
Yes. So she wasn't, I don't think she was necessarily not doing it just for wanting the rings. I didn't get that vibe from it. The vibe I got was she was disappointed in trying to hide her mistake, trying to seem like, oh,
Okay.
I don't make those type of mistakes. So I didn't have that issue with it. But I do feel like, though, ever since she's got the ring, and of course this is going to lead into the selfishness stuff, I do feel like she has kind of shifted more, and obviously I think she still wants to kill Sauron for the sake of killing him just because he killed her brother and all that. I still agree with all those things. But I feel like she has almost taken more of an Elrond take, where she's been a little more open to other people's things. And, she's obviously the Galadriel we saw in season one would never have accepted being lieutenant to Elrond and letting him command a troop like that. So I think we
Mm.
are starting to see her character development a little bit. And I think we're actually getting to see it rather than how Elrond was, where, like you said, I feel like his character development turning to this kind of just bitter elf was more so off screen. Because I thought that scene, like you said, where he was talking to the older, wiser elf, I forget his name, it's like Master Circuit or something. I forget exactly what it was. But I felt like that scene as well. I was like, oh, maybe he's kind of coming around to the fact that he needs to stay in his frame of mind, because he's going to be the one that causes these rings not to be used for power, that causes them to be used strictly for good. So I felt that scene was also kind of like you were saying. I thought it was going to be a good thing, and it felt like that scene almost ended up being for nothing, because after that scene, Elrond's just back to his own bitter ways.
And I think he did. And so I'm not completely hating on the show there for that writing for Elrond either, because I really don't think if he wouldn't have had that talk with his mentor, was it Sidar?
Sidar, I think that's what it was,
Sidar?
something like that.
But if he wouldn't have had that talk, I don't think he would have went with Galadriel at all. I think he would have kind of stayed. I don't think he would have been accepting of that at all. And I think for your point, like for her pride, I think she is just so desperate to get Elrond on her side that she's willing to put that aside, because she wants him to be on her team so bad that she's okay to put that kind of aside, because she wants her rings. She wants him on board with it. She wants everyone to be, let's use the rings, let's get Sauron now. And so I kind of like all of that, like it's almost there. And I'm not saying it's bad writing. I'm just saying I think it could be tweaked a little bit with the elves. Now, some of the things that I wanted to... So out of the other three... so
the next thing you brought up was the Celebrimbor thing, and I completely agree with that. That was really frustrating me. Like, his just willingness, he walks out in the rain and literally just plays, like, the easiest of tricks on Celebrimbor, being like, oh, a tale as old as time, we bloody our knuckles for them, and they take all the reward. That was really frustrating for me, because...
Yep.
Listen, Celebrimbor, dude, you have your own realm, right? You are responsible for the most impressive smiths in the world. Like, you're literally known for the 11 elven smiths. Eregion is like one of the most beautiful places on Middle Earth. I think that enough right there should have been enough to let you know that, you're not being taken advantage of. You're very highly respected in the elven world. And so that was something that really bothered me. That was such a dumb little trick to play on him, and for him just to really give into it. And then also, when Sauron basically reveals himself and calls himself Anatar, he doesn't even bat an eye to it. He actually bows to him for revealing his true form to him. And that felt really out of place for a character like that. And I think they tried to cover it up with the fact that, this has been his lifelong goal, is to create something that, changes the world. And of course, that's what the rings are. But it still felt out of place for that. So I completely agree with you on that respect. I thought that was kind of a waste of a character there. I'm interested to see, once we do get all these elves, once Elrond, and I know Galadriel is probably going to show up in Eregion, but maybe she doesn't now, because at the end of the last episode, she's kind of been captured by Adar. I am interested to see, though, what that dynamic is going to be like once Celebrimbor comes to terms with the fact that he messed up. But I'm also wondering if at this point he's going to respect Sauron so much for what he's allowed him to do, if he's just going to continue down this path that he's already on.
Well, I feel like he'll have to. And I'm really interested to see when Sauron crafts the ring. Because, in Lord of the Rings, it says it was crafted in the heart of Mount Doom.
Yes.
In secret. So I'm curious. I really hope they don't, he doesn't craft it in this forge in secret. Because I feel like it's kind of pushing that way. But I did, talking about the forge, I might be scatterbrained all over the place. But, he didn't get to touch any of the smithing materials or anything during the first crafting of the elven rings. But, dude, when he drops that mithril in there for the dwarven rings, that was so good. Like, a little bit of pause, a little bit of... And that's the kind of stuff I wanted to see. Like... It doesn't say much. It doesn't be like, he doesn't have to speak or anything, but that little pause, that little close your eyes, he is infusing his hatred and his will into that mithril to let those rings be corrupt. And I thought that was such a beautiful moment and such a good writing, and that's all I need. That's all I need for them to start displaying some power for him.
Well, and what's awesome though is he does touch the elven rings. If you remember earlier, before they've even forged them, he does hold the mithril for a really long time, and
Okay.
Celebrimbor's like, "Hey, you can hand that back to me," and he keeps telling him like, "Oh, you could fuse this with another alloy." So that's been there too, which I am appreciative
Okay.
of the fact that yeah, that is a scene that they have done. So that was his second time getting his hands on the mithril, which I love. I agree with that. They are showing us that he is still getting his way, and kind of that's the Sauron we wanted to see. We wanted to see the conniving and the sneaky
And
and all
super
that stuff.
powerful.
Super. That's almost the worst. You know, those manipulative villains that are sneaky in their ways. Those are the scariest ones because you don't realize their will has been imposed on you until it's too late. So I do love that aspect that they're going with. I think you were getting ready to ask me, about the other storylines that we have going on. I gotta say, I actually really am enjoying them. I think they're really fun as well. The only thing I'm still having a problem with, and I touched on it with you, and I think it's getting to be one of my more favorite storylines again. But let's talk about the Harfoots a little bit.
Okay.
I think their storyline is fun, and I also agree. Like where I was at, I had not ever come to any conclusion that the stranger was Gandalf or anything. I think by this point we can kind of know that that is who that is, which that's really fun and really cool to see. But my problem with that storyline is and it does make sense, so I'm not going to hate on him for it too much yet. But that is the only storyline so far that has had no connection with any of the other storylines. Arendir and Pelagir or Pelargar, wherever that place is called, and Numenor, they've all had contact with the elves now. They've talked to Galadriel and all that stuff, and I'm happy that all those storylines have come together in a way and they've crossed paths. But the ones with the Harfoots and Gandalf hasn't at all, and I kind of like it that it hasn't. But I do wish there was some sort of connection, and maybe I'm missing it, and I think we will get to that connection at some point because they do make references to, hey Gandalf, you're going to have to defeat both Saruman and Sauron, right? You're the one that's going to have to do that. But I kind of wish we had had a little bit of that already. I want to see some sort of connection rather than just letting this almost feel like its own story and its own show.
Well, and that's not Saruman.
Oh, is it not?
No, that's not Saruman.
Okay.
That's a different Dark Lord.
See, I thought that's who they were saying, like kind of hinting at that's who that was going to be.
No, because Saruman is originally good. He's only turned after during the events of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Okay.
So that is a different Dark Lord wizard. And so I think at the point of this story, several Eastar were sent to Middle Earth to kind of help. And that's kind of, and this may not even be Gandalf. I think we're supposed to be led to believe it is, and I would be surprised if it's not. But I honestly don't know enough about Tolkien's wizards and kind of like what the Eastar are and how long they live, because I mean it's like 2 millennia between now and the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings. So
well, and they do kind of make reference to that because of Tom Bombadil, the wizard that the stranger is meeting with now. I mean, he does make reference to how old he is. He talks about how he was there before the rivers were formed. When this was a green, beautiful land, and now it's sand. So I definitely think they are kind of setting that up to be Gandalf, and I think that's really cool. I really like that connection to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. That kind of stuff like that. I know we kind of give hate to other stuff when they kind of include like this character like that just to kind of get viewers, into it. This show has done it in a really well way though, because they haven't told us it's Gandalf. We're obviously still speculating about it. And it is cool because it's kind of an origin story. It's different. He's like actually a main character. He wasn't just thrown in there just to get eyes on the show. So I do agree with how they're doing it. I've really enjoyed that storyline. But like I said, that's been my biggest issue with that storyline. It's just it feels so disconnected and almost feels like it should have been its own show, talking about the origins of Gandalf.
And I completely agree with that at this moment. Now, I do know he's going to have to be a big deal and kind of like he's going to be incorporated in this fight. He's going to be tied in. But I do think this might have been a better case of let's tell this story opposite, and it is a little too slow. I think that's probably the part that really needs to pick up. I'm not. So you said you didn't like this, but now you're starting to like it, and I think as we start to see his powers form and him kind of get trained and remember kind of how to control everything, we'll just enjoy that more and more because it isn't super fun with him being this like I don't know anything kind of dude. Gandalf is amazing because he's the wise wizard that we love, that has the
Hmm.
cool tales and the cool powers and the fun phrases. But I think we'll only like this more as he starts to remember and control his powers more and more.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited. I was loving when Nori and him were kind of going back and forth about what his name was. I was really enjoying that scene a lot because I can't wait until he does come to the conclusion of what his name is. I feel like that's going to be a really, really cool scene. I'm super excited to see how that all plays out. Like I said, I do. This is my least favorite storyline, and it's not for lack of it being good. It's just for lack of it being connected to the overall story so far. And I do agree with you. I think we will get there, but we're 2 seasons in, and it's well, 2.5 seasons in, and it's not, or 1.5 seasons in, and it's not connected at all yet. So that's kind of where my problem with that storyline is. I think it's a really fun storyline. I'm really enjoying it, but it just does not feel in place for this story currently. Now, one of my favorite things that I'm super excited to see something happen with, and I feel like it has to happen, is I love the dwarves. I love Durin. I think that is such a fun storyline. I love seeing how stubborn they are. I love all that stuff. But what about that Balrog that we see? When that
Oh
leak
yeah.
gets down to the bottom, right? What's going on there? Do you have any theories? Are you enjoying the dwarves in this show? What do you think about them?
So the only thing I'm a little confused about. So the dwarves are my favorite storyline.
Okay.
Like I think hands down, they are my favorite part. Durin, his quarrel with his father and
Yeah, it's
his
awesome.
like his internal struggle is so consistent and so good. Like even with Elrond coming and like him no big deal, but he's hurt feelings, but his still commitment to his old long lost friend and his want to do good and his want to help people allows him to continue and maybe even go against his father's wishes. And then him comparing himself to his father in his own apology to his
Yes.
father. I thought that was just such a
Yes.
good moment and so sincere because it wasn't like he just was able to humble himself completely. He still had to get that little jab in there, like we're
Yep.
both
Yep.
stubborn, old man. And I thought
I
that was
love it.
so good, and I am loving Durin's story. I love his wife too. I think that
Yes, Disa is
yeah,
great.
Disa is so good. She's such a wonderful opposition to him, and kind of what us stubborn guys have to have. And as a wife, as someone who's like, there to kind of keep you grounded and bring you back to the apologies. And I really like her, and she's kind of like that North Star arrow for him. Even though like he's good intentioned, but he's flawed, and she's just like, hey, we'll get you. She's helping his flaws, and that's what a
Hmm.
helpmate is. That's what a wife is. And I thought it, dude. I think Disa's great. And so, yeah, they're by far my favorite storyline. And
Well,
the only thing I'm worried about is I don't know the timeline. I feel like the timeline for Awakening Balrog and like the mountains falling, I think it's a little too early. I think they could have maybe started that a little bit later and shown them a little bit thriving for longer.
so first thing I want to touch on is I agree with you, and I think Durin might be the most well written character in the show because just like you touched on with him having his internal struggles, but having that trust and that desire to help an old friend, it's awesome. And then I love the scene when Celebrimbor and Anatar or Sauron call them out to come get these rings made. I love when he's like, I don't trust them. They're lying. Elrond would never say such nice things about me. I
Yeah.
just love that dynamic. It's so fun. And it seems like he is the only character in the whole show that can't be tricked. He is so stubborn and so set in his ways that is good character development, and that is a good way to write somebody because he's not straying off of his path. And he's even tried to warn his dad, hey, I don't trust these elves. He even uses his own words. He says, you even said we shouldn't trust elves trying to cheat death. And his dad still doesn't listen. And I think that's just such a fun dynamic that we've got to experience with the dwarves because they're already one of the most fun. I think that's what makes the Hobbit movies such a favorite of mine is how stubborn
Mm.
they are and how much they really just desire to be in their mountain and to be happy with their gold and to eat plentifully. I love that stuff. They are such good, well written, a race, a species it's so fun to see them, interact with other species because they don't bend their knee to them. And I think Durin has done such a good job of being true to who he is. And I think that's been my favorite part of the show, like as a character is concerned, is Durin, because he is awesome. He's noble. He's doing what he thinks is best, for his friend, for the dwarves. He's just trying to keep the peace. He just wants to be happy, live in his mountain, and go about his way and mind Mithril. That's all he cares about. And I think it's really fun and a really good storyline as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you feel that way because I do think that you kind of nailed it there. Like him caring about his family, his dwarves, his friend, and just like wanting to be solid, and he's really good. But what do you think about the timeline? Do you think they may have like shot the gun a little bit, like a little false start on letting the mind be awoken?
I kind of I don't necessarily feel like they did it too early, but I'm not happy with how long it's been since we've seen the Balrog. I feel like it would have been cool to kind of see him, show us another scene of him maybe coming to the surface or something. Because he's obviously not just going to stay down in this cave. He's going to make his way to the surface. And it's been a while since we've seen him. So I'm interested to see how they go about that.
Was that episode 2?
I think so.
When the leaf fell?
Yes, so I think I'm not sure exactly of season 2.
Yeah, I think it was season 2 because it was when the ring worked, right?
No, that's when they still
that
had,
was
that's,
like
yeah,
that was,
that was the
that's right. That
mithril,
was like
just the ore, because he throws it across the table and the leaf is there.
Yes.
So
Okay.
that's what my problem with it is. It's been a while since we've seen that awakening.
Mhm.
So I agree. I feel like they did do it a little early, but there could be a really good reasoning behind it, and hopefully, obviously they're not really giving us they don't say 30 minutes later and stuff like that. So a lot of these things are happening at the same time. And when you're following so many different storylines, it's kind of easy to forget that all these things are kind of happening at the same time. And obviously we know it's been a few days because we've seen Durin and them go to Celebrimbor and see the rings getting made and all that stuff. So we know it's been some time. I don't think it's been as long as my mind is telling me it's been. But
I think it has been.
I agree with you. I do feel like they did shoot it a little too early. I think that might have been something, good to put in episode 6. Give us 2 episodes before the season end and let that be one of the season ending things. I think that would have been probably one of the better places to put it.
I think if they would have showed an initial hesitation to like they did for mining Mithril, and then after they see the rings work, then if their greed and their arrogance, they would have started to mine haphazardly for this Mithril, and that's what awoke Balrog instead of and I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to have that happen, but I think they just wanted everyone to see Balrog in the first season to make sure they kind of got that in there so that everyone knew what was coming. I feel like it was a little bit of them playing it a little safe to make sure everyone knew what was coming, and then they're really going to hit it home with the second or third season. And I think that is what's going to happen, but I do think they just I feel like it should have been like you said, it kind of showed him fully awake. Now, if it would have shown him maybe even just
or something, like a dragon, how you see them breathe and you kind of see the steam come out. That would have been what I was hoping for. Like
a bear, slightly disturbed in hibernation, but not fully awake. And then the careless mining is what gets him fully awake. Yes. I feel like that could have been played that scene just a little bit better, but I'm not gonna nitpick that too much because I don't know what they're gonna do with it because they may really nail it.
Yes, exactly. And again, we're only 1.5 seasons in. We still have 4 episodes left of this season, so there's still a lot of things. They have plenty of time to tie up because of how long these episodes are. But the only thing we haven't gotten to, I feel like we've touched on a lot of the storylines, and one that's kind of really got me hooked and interested in, and it's more of a political side of things. And usually that's not something I enjoy in shows. Usually it kind of irritates me because I'm just you can clearly tell who the evil person is here, and how come all the citizens don't realize it. But they've done it really well with Numenor. I feel like Numenor has been a really, really good way of them to show that political catastrophe going on, but also still showing it in things are they're just doing a really good job of that. How do you feel about what's going on in Numenor?
So it's funny because I really like the Isildur storyline because we know where he's going to end up, right? We know he's the one that's going to defeat Sauron. And so I really, really enjoyed his storyline. But the political thriller side of it, I'm not digging as much.
Okay.
There's some fun things there, but I just really hate the uh, the bad guy. Or I mean, we
It's like
don't even know.
Farazor.
Yeah, Farazan. Farazan.
Yeah, Farazon.
Farazan, I feel like, dude, and then I don't really understand the guy's daughter's reasoning for kind
I
of
don't
going
either.
behind his back, Arian.
Yep.
I don't
Yep.
really understand why Arian's doing what she's doing. I feel like that's kind of been lost on me. Now, I think the eagle choosing him was a pretty sick moment. I
Oh,
thought that
super
was
cool.
like
Super cool.
super cool. But I do think I don't love that side as much. I'm really happy with the Isildur stuff that they've done, especially, and then always, man, I'm really struggling with names tonight. Um, the dwarf that's with Isildur, Arondir,
Oh, the
Arondir. I
elf?
think, yeah,
Yes.
him,
Oh, he.
Arondir, and Isildur is like. Give me a bunch of them. Like I'm
Yes.
very happy with those two and what they're doing. Now I think that the girl that he popped up with, Esther,
Yes.
or
Estrid.
no, Estrid.
Eastrid. Eastrid. Estrid.
I feel like her character kind of made some stupid stuff, and that was like where she saved him from the mud monster, and then that exact night pulled a sword on him and said, "You guys would never accept me. I'm leaving." I was like, "Wait, like, why did you save them like 10 minutes earlier if you were
Yeah,
just gonna pull a sword and try to leave?"
I felt like that too. She's kind of like a character I think was really just there to push Isildur further. I feel like she's kind of really helped with his character development because he was the first person he's ever told, his mom really died saving him. He kind of really
Yeah.
started to open up a little bit. So I liked what she did for his character, but I also agree with what you said. I felt like she was kind of there just for the sake of being there. And I also feel that way about Theo. Theo might be
Oh,
my
dude.
least favorite character in the entire show.
Worst. He is the worst.
Super annoying. I don't know what purpose he's really serving other than kind of giving
Well, he
Arondir
ruined
something to.
everything for the first
Yeah,
season.
yes, he was the worst in the first season. He's not gotten any better. And it feels like he's only there to be a crutch to Arondir because he's kind of had to like babysit him now that his mom has passed on. So that's been kind of something that's a little frustrating.
Dude,
But I think this last
Snaggleroot and
episode,
Winterbloom should have smacked
awesome.
the mess and killed all of those idiots. The fact that they didn't kill those wild men and Theo is a criminal act. Like, they should have slaughtered them, and that would have been so much better. Like, you don't chop down, 3,000 acres of trees, and the guardians of those trees not just, they're not the Lorac. They're not compassionate and don't try to convince you to not chop down trees. Nah, dude. Like, they're here to smash and destroy. Like, I don't know. I felt like that was a really missed opportunity that, like, to kind of show their power and their threat, and that, like, hey, nature is really kicking back against, Adar. I really wish that they would have just went ahead and killed those wild men, and
Yeah,
then, a, Arondir could have really kind of convinced them that, like, hey, we're good, like a promise. This is for slaying orcs. We hate the people you hate. And then I feel like that would have been better. But I feel like when they introduced them, hey, look, it's Treebeard's family. It's kind of what like we wanted to see there. And there wasn't any consequences for them being in that episode because
I
the wild
agree.
men didn't die. No one had any impacts from the trees walking, and I really wish that we would have really seen Snaggleroot and Winterbloom kind of have more of an impact on the characters and maybe take a few out.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen them a little bit more in that respect, but I do think it was really cool getting to see them at all. And I think that's one of the things we talked about a lot with this show is how visually stunning it is. They looked really, really good. I was super happy with how they looked. I was super happy with, for the most part, how they acted. I did love the interaction between them and Arondir and how he kind of, reasons with them, and they kind of say, "Okay, we'll trust you. We'll let you live, and we'll give you Theo back." I do agree with the Wildmen. I do think they should have been killed. But yeah, so I liked seeing them. But yeah, just going back to like the Theo stuff, I know I'm kind of happy that at the end of the last episode, they kind of agreed to part ways, him and Arondir, because I feel like Arondir will now really get to push his own story forward, which
Yes.
we talked about it a bunch. He is another one of the best characters in the show. Very similar to Durin, very set in his ways, trying to do what's best for the vast majority of people. Very noble. I loved when we hadn't seen him at all in season 2, and Isildur is there, and he's about to get killed, and out of nowhere he comes about and kills all those wild men. I loved that scene. It
An
felt very
amazing
Robin Hood
action.
esque. Yes, it felt really cool. I absolutely love that. But again, he is one of the best characters in the show. So I'm really excited to see. He's kind of heading off on his own to go fight this entire orc army because he said, hopefully, I get another chance to meet Adar face to face. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see that happen again because they're on a collision course. Maybe that's how we see him and Galadriel get back together and fight two elves again, because there is nothing like those elves fighting. It's so fluid, it's so smooth. We talking about fighting scenes in the last episode when Galadriel is fighting all those orcs. Man,
Super
that is some
smooth.
cool fighting. I love it. She throws the torch up in the air and she shoots it with the arrow and the fire falls on the orcs. Super, super cool. And that's one of the things I've talked about many a times. I had a problem with season 1 is the action wasn't there. Season 2, they've done enough in each episode to be like, okay, that was good. That was a good setup. That was worth it. Now I'm okay to go back to just the calm storytelling that they've kind of been in for most of the show.
Yeah. Now we mentioned off the podcast that kind of like the comparison between Arondir and Legolas and their fighting styles and I felt like Arondir has like that smooth power, whereas Legolas is just all smoothness. Did you when watching it, did you feel that way at all, or did you pick up on that, or no, you just felt like he was pure elf?
I think they did a better job in this season. I think at the end of season 1, when we're kind of seeing him fight, that is where I felt that more, sheer power. He seems like he's just kind of trying to cut through stuff as hard as he can. I feel like in that scene in particular that we just talked about with Isildur, that did feel more Legolas-esque to me. That was kind of the more methodical fighting style. He's going to take out this person and then he's going to slice this person's leg next and he's going to shoot this arrow at this person. That felt very more elfish than he was in season 1, which I do appreciate because he is an elf. But I also did really like that he was a little different of an elf. I think we've kind of seen that throughout the entire show. He's not just your traditional elf. He's kind of doing his own thing.
He's like a ranger elf.
Yes. And so I did kind of miss that pure raw power aspect that he gave us in season 1, but I did also appreciate him kind of going back to his roots and being more of that traditional elf fighter.
Yeah, and I thought his fighting scenes were very, very well done. I've been very, very pleased with him. I do think they still could lean a little bit more toward the action and a little less toward some of the slow, methodical, like his chick's funeral. I felt like that was just like that was a good hot minute, and I think we're spending a little bit too much time with like Barrack. That's Isildur's horse.
Yeah, the horse. Yes.
Which I thought the cave scene with the spiders was so good.
Fun. Yes,
I mean,
yes.
I've really, really enjoyed season episode 3 and episode 4. They've been very fun, and I think that's just because we get back to Arondir, Doran, and then we get to see Isildur. Like those 3 character arcs are very fun to me. I'm really enjoying those.
Yeah, and I think they're still doing a really good job with the elf storyline because it is a very important storyline throughout Lord of the Rings. And I think they've done a better job showing more of their fighting and just enough of their politics. And I know I said I was enjoying the Numenor politics. The elves are always doing some political type thing. So it's been fun to kind of see them just going out there and doing stuff. And I think they've done a better job with that in these last 2 episodes. We talked a lot about a lot of different aspects of this show so far. Is there anything that you're really hoping that we see in the next episode? Do we get more of a Nori and Stranger episode, or do we continue with, Galadriel and, the elves going to Eregion? What do you think we get in this next episode?
So I just hope we continue to kind of follow Isildur and his dad. What's his name?
I can tell you in just a second.
But I really hope we kind of see his dad come back to Middle Earth kind of after the coup that has been done by Pharazôn. I really think that I don't think he's going to stay true. I think he's going to kind of come to Middle Earth and kind of start this fight, connect back with his son, and then they're going to kind of start to raise that army that will eventually fight Sauron. I hope that we kind of get to see where the nine rings are going, because we have not
Which humans
had,
they go to.
yeah, we haven't had a human Gondor, or we haven't had like a human city that really is worthy of having a ring. We've
Yes.
had a few towns in the Southlands, but where, like, who are these nine rings going to go to? Because there's
Yeah.
not been a human worthy of them yet. I'm assuming one will go to, uh, it's Numenor.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but
Farazan. Yep.
I think that's probably the only one that really will probably has been touched on, or am I missing something? Has there been other
No, I
cities that really need one?
no. I think that's really the only one we've seen so far. And by the way, his dad's name is Elendil.
Elendil, yeah. So
So I
I think he'll
think
come back to Middle Earth,
I
Elendil.
do too, and I think he'll obviously get back to his son at some point. I do think we're not going to see the humans really much for the rest of the season. I think this season will end. This kind of goes into what I think is going to happen in the next episode. I think this. I think season one was based on the elves getting their rings. I think season two will be the dwarves getting there. I think we're going to get introduced to a few more dwarves because I do think we'll see all the rings distributed by the end of the season. I think season three will delve into the humans. And if I don't know if we're going to get a season four, I think if we don't get a season four, I don't think we will. I think three would be a perfect way to wrap this up, with season three being all nine of the human rings getting distributed, and in the last episode, us seeing Sauron make the one to rule them all. That's the path I see this show going on. So I expect this show to really dive into more of getting these rings distributed to the dwarves in the next few episodes. I think that's kind of the path they're going. I think they kind of showed that in the first season with showing us the elves getting theirs. I think dwarves get season two, and I think season three will be the humans. And I think that's going to be a really fun way to see them go about that. And I think that's also why we haven't seen the humans get their rings and we haven't really seen much of them, is because I think they're going to be very heavy in season three.
Okay, but I mean, we have 7 rings for dwarves,
Yeah.
and we have
We
only
only know of one, really.
We only know of one.
Yeah.
So I think it would be cool if we maybe saw some more of the dwarves as well.
And I think the way I think it's all going to come together is I think ultimately they're going to get this ring and they're going to try to save their mountain, but I think other dwarves are probably going to come to try and help them save the mountain. And they'll find out about the mithril, and that's kind of how we'll see that whole path play out. That's what I'm expecting it to happen. I could be totally wrong. But one other thing I think is funny to me, that every time I see him on screen, Farazan, we just talked about him a little bit. Does he remind you of Jack Black in that Mandalorian episode any, or is it just me?
Oh, that's just you. That dude, that
I don't
Jack
know
Black and
why.
Lizzo episode has been stricken from my mind.
Every time I see him, it reminds me so much of that Jack Black episode in The Mandalorian. So I figured I'd throw that out there. If any of you guys
That's
out there
hilarious.
also see Jack
That's
Black whenever
hilarious.
he is on screen, please let us know, because I don't want to feel like I'm the only one. But no, we're caught up on Rings of Power. I'm really enjoying it, so I'm glad I stuck around for the entire ride. Zane, I know you're also really enjoying it. Is there anything else on the Rings of Power that you wanted to discuss, or are you pretty happy with where we're at, on our path of getting to all these rings being made and distributed?
I'm pretty happy with it. There's a bunch to kind of cover. Like we are very in the dark, especially with the E-Star. I'm really
Yes.
hoping this next one kind of focuses more on the Dark Lord and Gandalf, not so much on Nori and the Harfoots, but I really kind of hope that we really focus on the Stranger and Tom Bombadil, and then we get to see like what the Dark Lord is up to, because we saw kind of the bald chick that went after him thinking he was Sauron. Then we got to see the little mask dude come after them at the well, and I kind of would like to see that organization and kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes there. I just feel like there's so much like in that I don't know, and I would really like to those pieces to start to come together before we end this season.
Yeah, I would really like for this next episode, in particular, for us to see Gandalf finally get his staff. I think we're really about to start seeing him learn who he is. I think Bombadil is going to do a really good job of teaching him, what he's supposed to do, how he's supposed to know how to do these spells and be a wizard. So I'm hoping that's kind of the direction we go in this next episode. I think hopefully it starts off heavy with them. I agree with you. I don't really care about where Nori and Poppy are with the stores right now. I did kind of think it was cool how they did connect. I think his name was Sadik was his last name, or maybe that was his first name. Sadik
Yeah, and
Burrows.
how he went
I
off.
Yeah, I did like how his ancestry did bring him back to the stores. Thought that was a really cool way of, putting all that together. But I really don't care about that storyline a whole lot right now. I really would like to focus more on, the Stranger and Tom Bombadil. I think that would be really fun. So I'm hoping that's how the next episode starts. I definitely don't think we're going to start off with Galadriel and Adar. I don't think we're going to start off with any of them. I think this show has really kind of shown us that they're going to give us a cliffhanger, and the next episode is not going to pick up there. We might get
Yeah.
to it by the end of the episode, but they're going to start somewhere else before we get there.
Yeah, you gotta keep them dangling. But yeah,
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I'm very invested in the whole story, and I'm very excited where the season's going. I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah, I'm super pumped for it. I think it's been fantastic. So a little bit of extracurricular stuff. I'm excited to announce that I got my hands on Astro Bot, the new PS5 game, which has actually gotten rated super high. I think it's one of the highest rated games of the year. Don't know a whole lot about it because I never played the first one. But it was like a free game on PlayStation that when you bought a PS5, it came preloaded on there. It was called Astro's Playroom at the time. It was such a big success and so many people talked so highly of it that they decided to make a whole game based off that story and kind of just a platformer. And it's really just a homage to PlayStation history. They use a lot of different characters and a lot of different story designs and map designs to kind of just translate throughout this little Astrobot guy and kind of tell the story of PlayStation through, which I think is really cool. So I'm super excited to get into that. But one thing I wanted to touch on, I think Zane has mentioned it before on the podcast. It's been a couple weeks, so I don't think the sore is as painful. But Zane, why don't you tell us a little bit about what happened in your For Honor run on Baldur's Gate 3?
Oh man,
I gotta hit you with it a little bit.
nah,
I gave you a week.
man,
I gave
come
you a
on.
week.
It's
But I
still
know.
fresh. It's still
Tell us
fresh.
a little bit about what happened there, because I know some fans out there probably want to laugh at your pain a little bit. So
Oh man,
let's talk about it.
so Baldur's Gate is a um RPG game that we that has an honor mode, and the honor mode is the bosses are tougher. There's more story to the fights. You have to make sure that they have legendary actions, and everything's harder. Just everything's dialed up to 10, essentially. And the thing with honor mode is you can't die. If you die, the game is over. And as we've talked about, like Baldur's Gate's a pretty long game, so you can be several hours in to a run and then just lose it in one time. And yeah, I was fighting Orin. I came in.
The
I thought I
final
was
boss, correct?
no, second to final
Okay.
for me. Second to final. I mean, you can fight her. It's such an open concept. You can fight her so many different ways.
Okay.
But yeah, I went in. I thought I was prepared. I thought I was good, and I just got essentially the worst luck that possibly could have happened. Uh, I didn't understand what one of the legendary actions was, and that you had to kill somebody in order to not die. And so I had somebody that was escaped. He was almost out, and I was like, okay, next turn I'll be able to escape with this one person from my party, and everyone else will be safe. And I clicked in turn, and he died because it was a Baal's curse or something, and that if you didn't kill somebody on that turn, your player died, no matter how much health he had. And I was like, wow, that's
The realization
just
hit.
the worst. And I still had one character up. One character was down, but I knew there was no chance I could get out. And then my last character got cursed with the Baal's curse as well. And then I couldn't kill anyone because they had Sanctuary, and I died there too. And my honor mode ended in just a flash. I think I was 82 hours into that run. So
Yeah.
that one hurt. That one stung. That one sucked. But you know what? We're back. We're
I was about to
doing
say,
another one,
the story
baby.
in there. The story does not end there. I think have you already started your next honor run, or are you still waiting? Is it still a little too fresh for you?
Oh no, my next honor run's already in the thick of it, dude.
Okay, there
Yeah,
we
I
go.
had when the wife was away, we kind of went ahead and we're like, okay, like we got a free night. We can start one up and see. It's gonna be a minute. It's gonna be a minute to see if we win it. But what's really sad is you can kind of save and continue that game. Just you won't be in honor mode anymore because you've died, obviously. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna see if I could have beat that her with this comp. And so I did what any good person does. I saved it.
Started
and I
that save
went
up.
in. Yeah, and I completely wiped her with everyone alive. and I was like,
Yeah.
"You've got to be kidding me! This is just the worst."
Well,
Um,
this is like a Thanos moment for you, right? Infinity War, things look gloom. You know, everyone's been blipped. You know, half of mankind is gone. But you know what? There's always the next movie. There's always the next season. I know it's not the same, obviously, because it's a new character and stuff. But I think you're going to be a lot more well equipped for this run than you probably were for that first Honor run.
I probably should finish it just so I know what's coming with the next few fights because I know they're
Yeah,
just as hard, if not harder. And so I mean, there's a chance that it doesn't pan out this one either. And when you spend so much time in one of those role playing games and like you kind of had a character built, you don't want to do it again the same. And
yeah,
so I'm completely different build, completely different race, completely different class, and playing it completely different. So even though like yeah, it's the same game, you're having different experiences every time, and I'm really enjoying it. We've talked at length about like some of the pros and cons, but it is a fun game that you get to replay completely different and have just so many different experiences with it.
yeah. That's super awesome. Now, I'm excited for you. I'm excited. I'm gonna have to make sure I remind myself to for you to keep us updated on how your honor run is going because you know it's part of culture, right? Baldur's Gate 3
Yeah.
is one of the biggest video game hits of all time, so we definitely need to keep up to date a little bit with this run. But guys, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Zane, if you don't have anything else that you wanted to touch on, if there is something else you wanted to touch on that I forgot about, please let me know.
Nah, close it out, dude. You got to get to the Jets.
Yeah, man, it is NFL kickoff weekend. You know, the Jets, it's Monday night as we're recording it. Kickoff just happened a few minutes ago. Hopefully, Aaron Rodgers lasts more than 4 snaps this year because last year was very painful for us Jets fan. But I think we're in for a better season this year. But guys, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Weekly Fix. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to always rate the podcast. Tell a friend, tell a family member. We always do appreciate it. If you guys have any suggestions for things you want us to talk about in the future, make sure to reach out to us on all our social media platforms. We'd love to hear from you. And if you guys maybe thought one of our takes was absolutely horrendous or absolutely amazing, also let us know about that as well. But again, we do want to thank all you guys for all of the support. Thank you guys for listening each and every week, and we can't wait to catch you in the next one.